going to drive left field. It's deep. It's gone. Yes! And it is gone. Yes! It is bedlam at the bank.
Look at the doctor. Yes, he's got it. Here he comes. Way back to me. It is Cleveland slammed up. And the doctor made a sensational play. In front, the front, and they score! And Giroux's got it. Goldstein fires. Left and goal! Brady back again. He's got to be 10 and falls forward. And he fumbles the football and the Eagles have it.
We welcome you back to the Phillies Sports Hour. Today, live from a not-so-sunny Florida. Here on vacation. It's very cloudy today. Would have been nice to have a little bit of a sunny show, but not cooperative today. But we're gonna talk some Christmas movies, some Sixers, Eagles. We got a lot to go over today. Some college football as well, as we're in the thick of the college football playoffs. We hope you all had a great holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah, everything else you celebrate. And today we're gonna bring in Mr. Jolly himself, Matt Brown. Matt, how was your Christmas?
My Christmas was good. I didn't do too much. I saw my extended family on Christmas Eve, but Christmas Day was just me and my parents and my two siblings. Had a nice, cool time, watched some sports all day, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the ratings for the Christmas Day games in the NBA. It did pretty well, and they were some pretty good games. So we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, but let's start off. We're going to stay with the Christmas holiday theme. We're going to do a blind ranking. I have 5 Christmas movies, and you have to blind rank them without knowing what comes next.
Oh, boy.
All right, so if you want some pen and paper, try and keep track of what we got here.
I got some. We're good to go.
All right, let's start with Christmas Vacation.
Oh, Christmas Vacation. You might call me crazy for using number 1 right away, but number 1, Christmas Vacation.
Wow.
That movie gets funnier, I feel like, every time. Like, I love the first just vacation movie where they go to Wally World, and then you put Christmas around it. You bring everybody back, basically, that's funny. And Randy Quaid, Chevy Chase. It's the best. I don't think there's anything better than it. It's so funny every single time.
I'm not disrespecting that at the number 1 choice, but there is still 4 left on the board. So let's see if you're going to regret that number 1. Number 2, the second, we have the Polar Express.
Polar Express. Ooh. Now, Polar Express for me, when I was a kid, probably was my number 1. But as I got older, I kind of faded out. I still enjoy the Polar Express. I love drinking hot chocolate, watching all that. That was some of my favorite times as a kid in school. But I'm going to put them at a modest 3, right in the middle. I think it's a good spot.
Yeah, Polar Express might be one of my least favorite movies.
Ooh, okay.
Ever created. I do not. The animation freaks me out.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. That's my favorite part.
It is. It's disgusting. I just don't. I watched it way too many times in school. Like that's what the teachers always put on. I had enough. I've had enough. A Christmas Story.
5, easily 5. Oh my God, my hatred for A Christmas Story is so big. I think it's so boring. I understand it was made. I think it was either the 80s and maybe the late 70s. I don't care. It is so boring. The jokes aren't funny. I think I've only seen it twice. It's one of the least things I've watched, but the 2 times I've seen it, I have not enjoyed it one bit. I don't think it's funny. I don't think any of the jokes land with any of the characters. It's not a good story overall. I hate A Christmas Story so much. I don't watch it ever. A
Christmas Story came out in 1983.
Yeah, I don't even care if it's that old. It's so bad to me.
All right, now the live action Grinch.
2, easily going. Jim Carrey. I love Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's in one of my favorite movies of all time, The Truman Show, and his performance as the Grinch is one of the funniest things ever. I think it's the funniest Christmas character ever. The adult jokes that are in there are so funny. His accent and the way he just delivers lines, everything he does is so funny in that movie. So I have to put the live action Grinch too. It is such a good movie. Everybody in that movie, I think, is so funny. Me and my one friend, we always have like small parts that we quote to each other, and no one else understands what we're talking about, but me and him do. And it's so funny. I love that, The Grinch Stole Christmas, the live action version.
Yeah, I mean, he pulled that off while like basically suffocating in that makeup
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh my
Like that was
God.
crazy. And he just said like he'll do it again. Like obviously with technology where you can animate his face and his movement, but he said he'll do it again. So why not? Let's make another Grinch.
I'm all here for it. I would love to see him do it again. He was so good in that movie.
All right. So you have the 4 spot left?
Fourth spot is left open.
All right. So in your 4, you're putting Home Alone.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Looking back, I probably would switch Home Alone and Polar Express, but I'm okay with Home Alone at 4. Just the first Home Alone?
Yes.
I'm in the minority. I think the second one's better.
I agree.
I think the second one's a little bit better, but that's okay. I'll go with the first Home Alone. Still a good, funny class movie. Polar Express and Home Alone are about on that same tier for me, so I'm okay with doing that. I would have probably flip-flopped them, but otherwise, I think my list is pretty good. 1 and 2, no doubt. That would be my 1 and 2 overall films, and then Christmas Story 5. That's fine. So I think I did a pretty good job overall.
Yeah, it's not bad. I Home Alone 2 I think is the better movie, but for the publicity standpoint, I put Home Alone 1. But
It's
if
all
I
good.
had to do this, obviously I made this list, but I would
Mhm.
put Home Alone 1, Grinch 2, Vacation 3, Polar Express 4, Christmas Story 5.
All right. I like that too. That's a good list.
I can't tell you the last time I saw Christmas Story.
It's not good. They had a 24-hour like marathon on TV on Christmas, and I don't think I turned it on a single time. It's so bad.
They played a Christmas Story for 24 hours straight?
Yep, 24 hours straight the other day on Christmas Day. And I hope nobody watched it because it's not good.
Yeah, it's bad television. To be honest. All right, let's get into the sports. We're going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're going to start off hot. Jalen Hurts is not playing against the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow afternoon. He's out with a concussion. Kenny Pickett will start. Pickett completed 14 of 23 passes for 143 yards, including a touchdown and an interception. Last week, and the Eagles has lost to Washington. How much do you worry about no Jalen Hurts and Kenny Pickett going against Dallas?
You know, my big thing is you always worry when you don't have your starting quarterback playing. It's not fun. It's not easy to deal with. It's something that now you got to put your pretty much whole faith in your season because you still have not clinched a division yet. These games still matter the rest of the season. And now you're putting it into the hands of the guy that you just traded for this past offseason to be your backup quarterback. So obviously it's never going to be fun. It's never going to be easy to deal with a quarterback like that. And we talked about it last time about how Hurts has kind of been a game manager through this whole season and through the big 10-game winning streak they had. He has been serviceable and manageable, and he's been the guy you want. And people are saying that they can really do it with anybody, and I really don't know if that's the case. I think Kenny Pickett's going to do pretty well, but losing Hurts is a really big deal, and I don't think enough people have realized that yet because I think they're going to see it this weekend a little bit. I think there's going to be times when Pickett's going to struggle on certain things that maybe Hurts will be able to do, whether it's running, whether it's being able to make tight throws, and it's not that Kenny can't do those things. I've seen Kenny at Pitt, I think it was either senior or junior, whatever year that he came, his last season was there. Kenny was a beast at Pitt. He was an absolute animal back then. He had one of the best legs I've ever seen when running the ball. Some of his throws were so good. You know, his downside was his small little hands at the combine that nobody thought could be good. I don't think he reads defense as well. I think that's a really big skill of Hurts. He can read defenses very well. And like we talked about, Hurts has not been the guy that you need to take you to the next level and win you a game like a Josh Allen, like a Lamar. But he has been in, I don't want to say a game manager, but he's game manager-esque where he's been on a roll and he can make the smart decisions, not make mistakes, find A.J. Brown, find Devontae Smith, give the ball to Saquon Barkley when he needs to, find the run when you know there's an open lane. So I am worried a little bit that Hurts is not going to be playing this game because this is the biggest game of the season. This is the game that wins you the division this week. But I'm also ready for Kenny Pickett, and I think the Eagles are too.
Yeah, I wrote last week in my my takeaway article after the game that there's so much that changes when your backup quarterback enters the game in the middle of the game, no matter who the quarterback is, and it really shows you how much the Eagles were rolling against Washington with Jalen Hurts in the game. They had all these points in the first quarter, and then Jalen Hurts exits. The passing game changes. The defense is playing you differently. The running game isn't the same, especially with Jalen Hurts' legs. Third downs are tougher, and it affects your defense because the whole balance of the game, everything's off. And that was very easy to see in Washington. And, when your quarterback exits the game, obviously things change. Like, you can't run your exact offense you want to with Kenny Pickett. So they'll be able to do that on Sunday. Kenny Pickett had a full week of practice. He was limited a couple days, but full week of practice with the first team. And Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni were able to write up a game plan for Kenny Pickett. Will Sunday be more about that game plan that is written up by the offensive coordinator and the head coach more than it is about how Kenny Pickett performs?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think they're definitely going to play to Kenny's strengths. And I think you even saw Kenny's strengths this past week. It didn't take a genius to notice he was targeting A.J. Brown probably the most out of any other Eagles receiver. And my favorite thing is to always say for offenses, for backup quarterbacks and rookie QBs, their favorite weapons are tight ends. And right now, in a sense, we don't really have a tight end. We're running with Grant Calcaterra, who I love Grant, but he's not the playmaker that Dallas Goedert is, or that like Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce, George Kittle is. So as a backup QB who just gets thrown to a game, you look for your number one target, A.J. Brown. And you saw it last week, not only because A.J. Brown could not be guarded by anybody on Washington. Marshawn Lattimore got absolutely destroyed last weekend. I was so happy to see that. But you saw that he was targeting Brown almost every single possession, and rightfully so. He is, next to Saquon, he's the best player on the team. Yeah, it's really, I think it's 1A and 1B with both of them. When AJ's on, AJ is probably in the argument of top 3 receiver in the NFL because he is so good at getting open, getting his big body in front, and being able to catch pretty much anything thrown his way. And I honestly think that they're going to lean towards that a little bit, get Smitty involved too. I do think that they're going to, a big thing with Kenny is going to try to replicate what Hurts does. I talked about his legs a little bit. I think he's going to try to run a little bit more. He's finally got a week with the ones, and he's got, a little bit of chemistry growing with there, can make the right reads and can have certain play calls for him to be able to get out and run and make things happen on himself. So I think it's a little bit of both, playing to Kenny's strengths and kind of getting that game plan going. I think another thing is we haven't talked about is Saquon Barkley. He's well on his way to possibly having 2,000 yards, maybe even more, which I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you got to lean into him a little bit more. And that's no surprise there. He's been the best running back in the NFL this season for a reason. You need to lean on him a little bit. I think the whole offense kind of knows that too. Man, Jalen's out, and this is a big game. This is Dallas week. This is Dallas hate week. This is a game that you need to win every season at home. So I think the whole offense kind of knows that. I think Kenny knows that. Kenny's an Eagles fan too. He wants to win this game. So he's going to do everything in his power to do that, whether it's running the ball with Saquon, finding his reads, making sure that everything's good. And I think that starts up top with Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore. And I think Moore and company and the offense are going to put in a game plan. Like you said, he was limited a little bit this week, but I think that he, with a full week of knowing his role, is going to be starting quarterback. I'm ready to go. I can do this. I think he should be able to do it well. And I think the Eagles should have a good week with Kenny.
Yeah, hope so. Ocean Township native in New Jersey, grew up a big Eagles fan. Kenny Pickett did. So who better to go out and beat Dallas at the Link, win a division than Kenny Pickett, rocking these Kelly green jerseys. I'm wearing my new Saquon. I just got for the holidays. So
that's nice.
It's
nice.
It's a beautiful looking jersey. And you talked about Saquon. We can talk about him. He's 268 yards away from Eric Dickerson's record. Eric Dickerson came out and said that he's not rooting for him to break the record. All right, Unc, we don't care. But so let's say he goes out, has a big day against Dallas, is getting inching closer to the record. Do you let him go out there against the Giants, Week 18, in what hopefully is a bye week?
So that's
do you let him go out there and beat the record? Do you let him go out there and beat that record, or do you let the Giants win that game and they get a worse draft pick.
So it really depends on this week, knowing what's going on with Detroit and Minnesota and how their games play out. And we'll know that probably. I think they both play at 1. I know Minnesota plays Green Bay at 4:30 now. They stole our spot. But we'll know how things go with Detroit and what everything's going to look like after our game. And my thing is, he's got to have a really, really good game for me to put him out on that field against New York. Because, like you said, if we win this week and we're locked into the 2, a lot of our guys aren't going to play. I would think guys like Lane Johnson, Lana Dickerson, probably Mailata. I don't know what they'll do with Hurts, because I think they want him to get some reps. I don't think they just want him to have like this week off. He basically didn't play last week either. He got hurt in the first quarter. Then the next week off as well, and then just throw him into a playoff game against probably Washington as well. I don't think they really want to do that. So they may play Hurts next week a little bit. I just don't know. I don't know how many yards is the cushion for him to not stay in there. I would say it's under 100. They'll maybe consider it. I think under 60, 50-ish, they're going to try to get him the record. Anything over 125, 150, I don't think it's going to happen. Like I think if he goes out there and has like a 130, 140-yard rushing day, I think you're going to tell Saquon, look, you're going to get the first quarter unless you break one. I just don't think it's going to happen, which I'm okay with. I understand why Eric Dickerson's saying the things that he's saying. You know, it's a 17-game season now. I think eventually all these records, once they go to 18 games in the NFL, I think all these records are going to be broken anyway. It's just the way that it's going to be, and that's how things work. Like we used to have a 14-game season in the NFL way back when. So obviously those records got bounced when we moved to a 16-game season, and now it's going to be an 18-game season. So I think that records are eventually going to be broken for things like that. And you're always going to say, oh, well, and back in my day, it was the 16-game season. I had 2,000 whatever yards, and it is what it is. But I don't know. It's not that big of a deal to me. And I don't think Saquon cares that much as well. He wants the number one accomplishment of the season, and that's to win the Super Bowl. That's 100% on his mind. It's 100% what he wants. He has everything is in place for the Eagles, I think, to go through the NFC. They got some tough opponents, but they can definitely make it to the Super Bowl. And they want to host a Lombardi Trophy in February. So as much as Saquon would love to get that record, I don't think it's the top of his mind right now, especially after these rough games that he's had. Not rough games, I would just say, because he still rushed for about 120 last week, but not like 180 rushing yard games that he's had. But I don't think, if they don't get under 100 for him after this week, I don't think he's going to be able to go for that record week 18. Like you said, it's going to be a bye week, essentially, if they're locked into the 2. And these guys want their rest. 100% they want their rest, and they're going to get their rest if they have to. And they know, even if it means losing to New York at home, it sucks to suck, but you're going to host a playoff game the following week for Eagles fans. Hopefully you win that game and keep going, but it'll be okay in the end, I think, if he doesn't get that record.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that the number one goal of a Lombardi Trophy is more important than a self-accolade. As a fan, I'm saying that, and I believe Saquon also believes that, you know, as kind of an Eagles fan coming up, and, you know, it's always cool to break a record, but win a Super Bowl is always the number one priority. Saquon's been held in check recently. He had a huge first quarter last week, didn't really do much after that, the week before that as well. So should we expect a pretty sizable Saquon day with Kenny Pickett in there against this Dallas Cowboy defense, which we're going to get to more in depth in a little bit, but what do you expect from Saquon tomorrow afternoon?
You know, I'm still expecting him to be in the hundreds for the rushing yards. I think a big run could really push him to almost 200. It's kind of like how we saw in the Rams games. Like those 2 big runs really pushed him into the 200s. If he can break loose on one of those big runs, which I definitely think he can do against the Cowboys, I think they could. I honestly think a little bit it's on the O-line this week. And late in that Washington game, I think the O-line kind of got a little bullied, in my opinion, by the Washington front seven. Saquon really couldn't run in the second half. I don't know if it was the second half plan that Washington was doing something different that really made that hard for Saquon to run. But I think the O-line got a little punch in the mouth last week, and they're banged up. I know they are. Landon Dickerson is dealing with some, I believe, knee injury. I know Lane has an injury too. Mailata was on IR for missed 4 weeks, so I know he's hurting. I know they're banged up. I'm not saying they're soft one bit, whatever. But I think this O-line, you know, they're a little pissed off. And I think that Saquon, and this week against the Cowboys, like I said, it's Cowboys hate week. Everybody in the Eagles locker room knows they hate the Cowboys, and they want to make sure and give a message out to them that their season's over. Our seasons keep going. And I think a huge rushing attack could help. And with Kenny Pickett, I think they're going to lean on Saquon a little bit. Now, they can't lean fully into it because Cowboys would end up doing what Washington did. They sell out for the run with Saquon and force Kenny Pickett to make throws. You got to have a good match. That means you got to make sure that Kenny is either moving in the pocket and running himself or finding A.J. Brown and Smith and Calcaterra and all these other receivers and making good throws so that they can bounce off the run and make it so that there's holes up front and not just sell out rushing 6 so that Saquon can't go anywhere. So I expect Saquon to be around 130 to 150 yards, probably finds the end zone at least once this weekend. But I think O-line, a little pissed off this week. I think they can make a big example out of the Dallas front seven that honestly I think is a little hurt with just, kind of the shiny toy with Micah, and then the rest is not really looking so hot.
Yeah, let's talk about this Cowboys team. They've won 5 of their last 6. Those include the Commanders are in there, the Panthers, who are on the rise, are in there, the Buccaneers are in there. Micah Parsons has been huge for Dallas ever since that they got tormented by the Eagles back in October at AT&T Stadium. They played better. Micah Parsons came back. Are you worried a little bit about, this Cowboys team against a shorthanded Eagles squad coming off a tough loss?
I would be a little bit more worried if we were in Jerry World. But I think some of the things that have happened to him in the last couple of days, most notably the CD Lamb injury, has kind of eased my worriness a little bit because CD Lamb just loves torturizing us, and it's kind of annoying to watch it. I feel like it's the same thing for A.J. Brown on the other end, and now Saquon Barkley too. So I understand all that, but my worriness is going down a little bit with the CD injury. I honestly think there's not a single person in Dallas' secondary that can cover A.J. Brown. Deron Bland is the best corner left. He's okay. I don't think it's that big of a deal for AJ. I think AJ can do exactly what he just did against Marshawn Lattimore last week. So I'm really not worried about that attack that much. But this Dallas team is, not the worst. And I didn't think they were the worst either. I think they got into a really bad spot at the beginning of the year, having a little bit of unexperienced guys. And that was in large part to them not being able to sign big name free agents last year. So you kind of saw the inexperience at the beginning of the season. And then all of a sudden Dak goes down. He gets hurt. He's out for the year. You're kind of in a rut. You're like, well, we're going to see what we can do with Cooper Rush. Micah got hurt in the middle of the season too. He missed a couple games. And you kind of got to the point when you got to the meat of your schedule and I think they were 3-7 at some point. 3-7. You're pretty much out of the playoff race at that point. You're not going to win 7 straight games to go 10-7. You kind of get in a rut and you're like, well, we're just going to see what we can do this season. And I think the one win they had at Washington a couple weeks ago, I always say division games are so hard to win, no matter if you're home, away, whatever. It's always a street fight usually, unless the teams are really that bad, like maybe the Giants when we saw them earlier this year. So no means I'm going to say that this game is going to be a cakewalk. It's Dallas. They don't want to lose this game just as much as we don't want to lose this game. But Cooper Rush has been playing decent. I think a big thing they've leaned on is Rico Dowdle has been a fantastic running back for them. They have leaned on him a lot in the last couple of weeks, and it's really opened up their passing game for Rush and able to have their offense work well. It was a big reason last week against Tampa Bay. They were able to run the ball really well and throw to CD whenever they did, and their offense kind of stalled when CD got hurt at the end of the first half, and which now he's out for the year with that shoulder injury. And they were able to hold on. Their defense played pretty well against Tampa Bay, who Baker kind of made some mistakes turning the ball over, and same with Rashad White too. So in no way, shape, or form do I think Dallas is bad, but my worriness is coming down. CD Lamb's helping that, but I don't think this Dallas team is even close to the Eagles level. So that's where it stays. Even with Hurts out, I think we have the weapon on offense and on defense too. I think defense, like I mentioned with the O-line, they got punched in the mouth last week with Washington. They really are pissed off. They want to win badly. And I think they really want to shut down Dallas and make sure that Dallas' season it already is over because they're not making playoffs. They don't want them winning record. They want Dallas' season over right now this week. And I think their defense is going to do big things with that.
If they can't have an old school 8-8 record, like it was always funny when Dallas would finish 8-8, give them an 8-9 record.
Yep.
Make it even more laughable. Give them under 500. Now, this rivalry between the Eagles and Cowboys, there hasn't been a meaningful game in this rivalry in years. I would think the last game was 2019 in late December. I think it was week 16
Yeah,
at
remember
Lincoln
that game.
Financial Field for the division. I was actually at that game with Sidney. I think it was Sidney Bird. Something Sidney. It wasn't Sidney Brown. He wasn't on the team yet, but it was someone broke up CD's
Yes, I know you're talking
CeeDee
about.
Lamb's. Dak Prescott through the corner of the end zone. It was broken up, and that was it. It just started a downpour here. Well, that's Florida weather for you. Out of nowhere, just floodgates over. Anyway, can you hear that?
I can a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of crazy. All right, anyway, I digress. The rivalry doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
Mhm.
You know, Darius Slay's going on Michael Parsons' podcast. The games don't really mean anything anymore. Feel like the players don't hate each other. Is this rivalry decreasing? Do you feel?
I think it has in more in compared to earlier years, and I think that's the way the NFL has been a little bit. You know, you don't see the full. You don't normally see the full on fights and the arguments between like something like I know there used to be times when like Pittsburgh and Baltimore players would fight each other, Eagles and Cowboys as well. They would literally fight each other on the field. You know, you don't see that as much. I still think the rivalry is a thing. I know the fact that a ton of those guys, they hate Dallas, and Dallas doesn't like us. And same with their fans. You know, we always see fans fighting, which is, I think, the dumbest thing ever at stadiums. But like you said, it's been a while since they've had a really, really meaningful game. I remember the Gardner Minshew one. That was like the last time. That was probably to me the last time they had something meaningful. 2019 was a big one. Sidney Jones, by the way, is who you were thinking of. I just thought of that.
Sidney Jones, that's right.
Yes, the Washington corner. That game, that was a great game too. That was a fun season with the 2019 end with Wentz when they had. I remember Colin Cowherd specifically saying Wentz was throwing to deck chairs and lawn furniture. For wide, that's such a good quote. For wide receivers.
I think Greg Ward was their number one.
Yes, Greg Ward
was.
Greg Ward. Oh my God, that's such a. I still can't believe we went through that. But I remember that. I remember that end of that season when Wentz was playing well. And then they go to the playoffs and lose to Seattle. But anyway, that was a really good game. And they've always had really good games, Dallas and Philly. I think this one will be kind of like the lower end of that. Not as serious because, you know, Dallas really isn't playing for much. I think they're honestly don't want to win as much. They want better draft picks. But, you know, Mike McCarthy's still coaching hard. Cooper Rush, he's still trying to prove that he's a starting quarterback and at least in the NFL. And just trying to, you know, a good old rivalry game. And yeah, Michael Parsons and Slay, I don't think they're big. It sucks because they feel like the stars that need to hate each other, but they do like each other. I don't really hate Micah. You know, he provided me some great years at Penn State watching as a fan, but I do hate him as a Cowboy. It's kind of annoying. But you know what? This rivalry still is intense. I think it's still going to be intense this weekend. There'll probably be some disagreements between each other. I'm sure AJ is going to talk his smack, and we'll have to break them up between him and like probably Deron Bland or whoever is covering him. So I still think it'll be a good physical game, just not like how the early 2000s kind of used to be with like T.O. and McNabb and all them.
Yeah, how when the games used to mean something and these guys hated each other. But it feels like a lot of rivalries, kind of maybe outside of college football, I feel like college football rivalries were kind of renewed in that rivalry week with the flags and everything. But like in professionals, it feels like rivalries kind of are fading away a little bit. But that's a different conversation for a different day. We did talk about a rivalry that we didn't know was going to exist. Nick Sirianni and Zach Ertz got into a little debacle last week after the game. Here's the video. I don't really know how to describe it. So to me, this is nothing. Apparently, like Sirianni, like slapped his hand or something, and then Ertz went after. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Is it like it doesn't feel like anything?
That's how I feel. I really don't feel like this was that much anything crazy. Like I thought it was going to be. I feel like you would have heard about it the second after it happened on Sunday if like they were in a heated argument or whatever. But nothing ever came of it. Again, I think this is just a big thing for Philly sports media just to try to blow it up, which I think they honestly just love hating on the coach anyway. So that's why they did this in the first place. But I think what happened, if I had to guess, it's either Ertz took like he took it the wrong way, the way Sirianni either like slapped his hand or whatever, or said something to him that maybe he didn't mean to say or whatever. I don't know. I think this is all just blown out of proportion. Ertz said the same exact thing. We just had a disagreement on something, and it just made it seem like they were fighting. They really weren't. So I really don't think it's anything at all. I think, again, was a misunderstanding on the field. You know, Nick's probably pissed off. They just gave up a game-winning touchdown in the last 10 seconds of the game. So I understand why Nick would probably be pissed off, but I really don't think this is anything to blow steam over.
Yeah, it just feels like it's another immature thing that's happened with Nick Sirianni this year. Like, how many things like have happened this season alone? Like, you don't hear this from any other head coach and he's had multiple this year of things that are like happening that shouldn't be happening, and disagreements and arguments and chirping people. Like, just feels unprofessional.
Yeah, it does, but I would be madder at him. I would be more mad. That's the way to say that. I'd be more mad at him for the things that he did if the players got on the players' nerves. But honestly, guys like Brandon Graham and like Hurt, they loved like watching Sirianni fight for them and like talk crap back and forth to players, and like the team loves this. So if the team is fine with it, I'm okay with it. When it becomes an issue where players don't like it and they feel like he's doing a wrong thing, like yelling at people and stuff like that, and like getting in the media with like all the yelling at fans or whatever, then I have an issue with it if the players don't think it's a good thing. But there have been multiple players have come out and said that we love Sirianni, we love the way he coaches us hard, we love the way that he talks smack, and they try to back it up for him because that's what they're supposed to do. So I don't fully think it's that big of a deal. Does Nick do things that I'm like, why are you doing certain things? Yes, but that's me as a fan. I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know what's going on. So I take everything with a grain of salt and I try to see it out. So again, it's not the worst thing. Are there things that piss me off with him? Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot of things that piss me off, but I can deal with them. Got to win though. That's where it runs full circle. If you win, you can do whatever the hell you want. That's how I see things.
All right. Will the Eagles clinch the NFC East Sunday afternoon at Lincoln Financial Field against the Dallas Cowboys, or will we have another meaningful game in Week 18? What's your prediction for Sunday?
I have a 24 points for the Cowboys, and I have 38 for the Eagles. I think they get a late touchdown.
Wow.
I think it stays about 31-24 throughout the fourth quarter. Eagles pull away late, end up winning 38-24. My final score, 2-touchdown win for the Eagles. I think Saquon finds the end zone. I think A.J. Brown. I honestly think Kenny Pickett does a little tush push and finds his way into the end zone too for a rushing touchdown. That's my bold. If I had to bold predict something, I think Kenny Pickett scores a rushing touchdown. So overall, I do pretty well. I think the defense holds well, gets after Cooper Rush a little bit. I would say round 3 to 4 sacks. I think Bryce Huff this week. I think Bryce Huff's going to play too. So that's another plus for him. I know we just lost Shaq Barrett to the Bucs. I didn't really think he was going to be here this late. They honestly have the depth with Bryce Huff coming back. So they're going to get after the quarterback a little bit, maybe find another Reed Blankenship interception, which I called last week. You want to know this, but I sat in my living room with my dad. I said, Reed's going to pick this ball off on this drive. I know it. And it came through. I was going crazy on that play. But I think maybe have a nice interception or two, get after Cooper Rush, and I think we handily win this game and win the division for, I think it's the third time under Sirianni? Third time under – no.
Or 22 second time.
Second time under Sirianni. I always forget that we don't.
It's this will be once again since 2000 whatever. It's like every other year, NFC East team wins.
Yeah, I always forget that we didn't win last year somehow. Like I still can't believe that. But yeah, I think we win the second division under Sirianni this year tomorrow against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I don't want to think about last year, but I do want to think about the great deal you can have in SeatGeek. The holidays are over; they're done. No more presents, no more gifts. But doesn't mean you can buy yourself a gift and go out and go to an Eagles playoff game, go to a Sixers, go to a Flyers game, Go to whatever you want, a concert, comedy show, whatever. Everything is on SeatGeek. It's the most easiest and efficient way to buy your tickets. They'll tell you if it's a good deal. They'll tell you if it's a bad deal. And at checkout, use code Phillies Sports Report. You'll save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Again, Phillies Sports Report, $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Link is in the description or the bio to save at SeatGeek. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the show. All right, let's move on to your roots. College football, first round of the CFP have come and they have gone. Every game was on. There was not a competitive game all weekend. The home favorites dominated. What were your initial takeaways? Unbiased, because we know Penn State kicked some horse around. What are your thoughts on the first round of the college football playoff?
Well, we killed those ponies, so I'm happy about that. But as a fan of college football, what's the best weekend for playoff games? No, it was not the best weekend. The games weren't that competitive. As a fan watching on TV, I only watched the Indiana Notre Dame game like in full. I got the second half of the Tennessee Ohio State game after I got home. I went to the Penn State SMU game. It was the best atmosphere I've ever had at a sports game. And I've been to Phillies playoff games. I haven't been to an Eagles home game technically. I've been to away games, but I've been to Sixers games that have been loud, Flyers games. I've been to Phillies playoff games and regular season games that have been packed. This was by far the best atmosphere I've ever had in my life. I've been to a lot of Penn State home games. I went 3 straight seasons when I was a student. And this was like none other. It was so loud the entire game. And it was so incredible watching that game in person. The 2 pick sixes were absolutely incredible. Nobody sat down the entire game, which normally like people sit down in between breaks. Nobody sat down. Everybody's on their feet. It was freezing cold. And there were still 106,000 people in that stadium cheering on Penn State. And as a fan, the games weren't the best. But I think what we're taking away is the 4 home playoff atmospheres were absolutely incredible. I was witness to one of them. I went to the Penn State game, one of the best games I've ever been to. Everybody is saying it's probably the best game at Beaver Stadium that they've ever been to, which is awesome. The Notre Dame atmosphere looked great the night before. Everybody said it was fantastic. Texas was rocking. I was catching glimpses of that game as I was at a tailgate that Saturday. And the Ohio State-Tennessee crowd looked great too. So I think the one thing we're taking away is they were great home atmospheres for the teams that deserve the home games that were hosting them. So as a fan, you're going to say, oh, these games weren't really, down to the wire, last play, last game-winning field goal. Like they weren't that great of games, but overall, the experience was just good. I think if they wanted to fix things, I think the simple fix is not having the top 4 seeds be 4 conference champions. I think you should have the top 4 seeds as the 4 best teams overall at the end of the season. And in that case, it would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State. They would have had a bye, and then you move on to the next round, and then you seed accordingly. Now, I still think that the 5 conference champions that there were this year, Oregon, Clemson, Boise State, Georgia, and Arizona State, I still think those 5 should be in the tournament as automatic bids, but you should rank them however they end up, whether from 1 to 12. And then you go from there after that. So while the fan at home watching didn't have a great time, I do think that the in-person events were great. It really caused a great idea from college football to have playoff games at home. That's how it should be, in my opinion. But I overall don't think it was that big of a fail for the first round of the college football playoff.
Yeah, but I mean, you see those home teams dominated in their home stadiums. You've never seen an SMU play in the cold on the road in front of 106,000 people. Like that doesn't always happen. Indiana isn't always playing at Notre Dame. Like that's also the thing with the playoffs is like who you're playing. Like that's like your schedule dictates how you're gonna, be looked upon. Should SMU have been in the playoffs over Alabama? That there's that argument there of like the committee. Did they select the right teams to play in the right atmospheres to make competitive football? It's something you have to take in consideration a little bit.
Yeah, and I think back what I was saying, I think the top 4 teams should have the bye because if you do that, I think you have better even matchups in the first round. it would move teams like Notre Dame up to it would move Notre Dame up to like the 5 seed at that point, and then it would just move every tick up, and it would give teams that were like Tennessee, who probably deserved a home game in the end, wouldn't have to travel to Ohio State. They would instead would host whoever they would get at home, and then teams like Indiana would possibly be getting a home game as well, which is honestly probably a team that deserves it. And then you're giving teams like Arizona State and Clemson, who barely squeaked in because they won their conferences, they got to go on the road. You know, they're just not as good as teams. It doesn't have better resumes as some of the teams that are higher ranked. So I think if you got matchups like a Tennessee versus like an Arizona State, or like Arizona State versus Indiana, or Clemson versus Tennessee, I think you would have saw better matchups. You could have got an SMU in there, and a Boise State would have been there. You could have got Boise State versus Tennessee, or a Boise State versus Ohio State. They would have been another good matchup. So I think things could have evened themselves out a little better. I think you just got to a point where Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, all three of those teams probably weren't losing at home. And then you get Ohio State playing Tennessee. I didn't think Tennessee would get beat that badly. But overall, I still don't think the game's the worst. I think there could be modifications to the format, the way they do it. And then I think it could fix itself out. I honestly am in the minority that I think this upcoming round of games should be home again. I think home playoff games are such a big thing for college sports, and it's what defines college sports, not going to play in Arizona and going to play in AT&T Stadium. And although I will credit the Rose Bowl, I'll talk about that in a little bit, how I love the Rose Bowl. But playing in college stadiums at home, that's how you should do it. I did think the atmosphere was great, and it brings so many more people to college football and brings so many more people to those games as well.
I think the Rose Bowl should always be the national championship.
I'm in that minority.
National championship should always be at the Rose Bowl, but Penn State will be playing there on New Year's Eve. Let's look at round 2. Let's look at the prediction. What are your predictions for round 2? We'll go game by game. Texas and Arizona State is the early game on New Year's Day. Who do you have there?
So Texas, Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. I am going to go with Texas to win. Now, I love Arizona State. I've been a big Arizona State fan all season. Their head coach, Kenny Dillingham, I believe he's 34. He's the youngest head coach in college football. I think he's the youngest head coach in college football history. I love Kenny Dillingham. I think he should have been coach of the year over Indiana's coach, Kirk Cignetti, because Kenny Dillingham was picked last. They were picked to finish last, Arizona State, in the Big 12, and they won the whole conference. That's incredible to me. I think he should have been the coach of the year. I love Cam Scatterbo. I think he's probably the second best running back in the nation behind Ashton Genty. I'm a huge Ashton Genty fan, but I love Cam Scatterbo. He was absolutely electric in that Big 12 championship. And I think that's the thing that Texas is going to struggle with, calling in his run game, because they really struggle against the run. But I think the speed of Texas and the quarterback skills of Quinn Ewers, and probably should be Arch Manning, honestly. But I think it's just they have too much talent to lose a game like this. It's a shorter distance for them, for their fans. I think they're going to take over Atlanta a little bit compared to Arizona's fans going all the way out to Atlanta. So I think they're going to have the minority in the crowd, or the majority in the crowd, and I think that they're going to end up winning this game. I have them winning 41-31. Solid game overall from Quinn. I think he makes a couple big plays that gets them to the semifinals.
Ohio State versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl.
Oh, the Rose Bowl. You said it. I 100% agree with you. I think the Rose Bowl should be the national championship. It's I've never been out there, and I eventually will get out there one day. But the granddaddy of them all is by far, I think, the best football game played all year, and I'm talking about including the Super Bowl. I love the Rose Bowl so much. I've been able to watch and remember 2 Penn State Rose Bowl games, the one in 2016 they lost to USC, and then the one in 2022 that they beat Utah in. They've been such great games, and I love watching seeing the stadium and then the sunset at 6:30. It's the perfect time for all that out there. You know, it's such a great scene out there. This game, though, is going to be really tight. Last time they played, Oregon won by a point at home. They're going to have the advantage being on the West Coast. A lot of their fans are going to be out there. You get the classic old Pac-12 versus Big Ten matchup, even though it's Big Ten versus Big Ten. I think it's going to be a close one as well. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to make a few big plays for Oregon, and it's going to be close, but I think Oregon wins on a game-winning touchdown. They win 40-37. They move on and crush Ohio State's dreams once again.
That's as a Penn State fan, I know that's what you are gonna love to see.
I'm an Ohio State hater through and through.
All right, the nightcap on New Year's Day: Notre Dame versus Georgia.
This is a big one because Georgia is now without their quarterback, Carson Beck. And while I don't think Carson Beck was that great, I do think they ran their offense very smoothly under him. And because of that, I think Georgia's going to struggle. I think their defense is very on and off. It's not the Georgia of old when they had pretty much the entire Eagles front seven of Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. I'm trying to think of name, but N'Kobe Dean, even like guys like Keely Ringo in the secondary. They don't have that defensive old. They got some good guys. Michael Williams, a dog. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. But it's just not the Georgia defensive old. And their offense, they look decent against Texas without Carson Beck in that game, but I just can't trust picking Gunnar Stockton, a true freshman quarterback, against Notre Dame and their run offense and Riley Leonard and their really good defense. I got Notre Dame to win. I think it's going to be close, low scoring. I'm going to go 27-17 Notre Dame. They pick up the win in the Sugar Bowl over Georgia.
All right, now Penn State versus Boise State. Will the Penn State front be able to shut down Ashton Genty and play, as you're saying, Notre Dame?
No bias in this. No bias at all. We will shut down Ashton Genty. I really feel it's time. I love Ashton Genty, and I love his play style. He's going to probably go to the Cowboys in the first round. Everybody knows it. I don't know if they need a running back, but he grew up in Texas. He's a Cowboys fan. I think he's going to be a Cowboy next year, which sucks because I'm going to hate watching him run against us next year. But I think if they can limit Ashton Genty, do basically what they did last week against Jennings on SMU, shut down the run, stack the box, and force Maddox Madsen, Boise State's quarterback, to throw the ball to our corners, I think it should be a really, really good game. Not as close. I think Drew Aller, he really thrives in indoor settings. He did fancy and warm weather too. He did great against USC out in California this past year. He did great in the Big Ten Championship indoors in Indianapolis against Oregon. I just don't think Boise State's defense can stop the playmakers that Penn State has in Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, really even Drew Aller as well. I have Penn State winning 34-21. I think Genty still rushes for close to 150, but I'll take under 150. That's honestly what I'm waiting for. I think Drew has a big day, throws 3 touchdowns. Their defense plays well enough to win the game, and they move on to the semifinals.
All right, we will see how that plays out. Now we got to thank FOCO, of course. And whoever wins those bowl games, FOCO is going to have the merch and the bobbleheads that you can purchase. I know Matt's going to get himself a Penn State. What bowl are they in?
They are in the Fiesta Bowl. I got my Bowl. I got my Peach Bowl shirt last year. I actually did use FOCO last year. Not even kidding. Use them as well.
There you go. And you can save some money at FOCO with the link in the description or the bio. All in-stock items are 10% off at FOCO with that link. I do think, though, all the Penn State stuff next week, if they win, will be pre-order. So you cannot get the 10% off, but you still can support Philly Sports Sport and, help us out. Use the link. Get your stuff at FOCO. Thank you to FOCO for sponsoring our final segment of the show. The Philadelphia 76ers, oh my, are they back. They've won 8 of their last 11. They had a huge, kind of incredible win in Boston on Christmas Day. Caleb Martin appeared out of nowhere. Tyrese Maxey had a big game. Are the Sixers back, Matt?
I don't want to say they're back because this is how they should have been here all season long in the first place. I hate saying they're back because this opening night, this is how the team should have been playing, with Embiid, George, and Maxey all healthy on the same floor, playing great games. So I hate to say that they're back. Yes, they are back in terms of getting back to the way they should be playing basketball in the first place. So I hate to give them the benefit of the doubt, they're back. They're getting ready to go. But yes, in terms of the way they say that, they are back. They've had a really good stretch these last couple weeks. It was capped off by one of the probably best games I've seen the Sixers play. God, maybe in 2 years, 3 years. That Boston Christmas game was such a good game overall from them. They didn't let the Boston Threes and the crowd take them over. They didn't play. It didn't feel like they played scared ever. Tyrese Maxey was playing as loose as he's ever played. They got a really big game out of Caleb Martin. That was no doubt his best game as a Sixer by far. And Joel did what Joel had to do. It was a little slow from Paul George. I think that's okay. He's not going to be the superstar that you need every game, but you need him to be that supporting cast every once in a while. But the two guys who have been the Sixers guys the last couple of seasons, Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, they showed up big time, and they showed up in a big way for Sixers fans. And I don't know who said on Twitter. I saw somebody say it, but before the game, somebody said a Sixers win tonight would be a team going forward. It would be a national audience win for them against the Celtics, a team that they notoriously, they can't beat. They get to the playoffs and they can't beat them. And again, it's only the regular season. It's only December still. We still got a long way to go in this regular season before they even make the playoffs overall. They're still 11-17 right now. But they're finally building towards a movement that they can get behind Embiid finally starting to play some games, behind Maxey really showing that he is the star of I think honestly Maxey's the best player on the team, but that's another thing. You're finally seeing some good role players finally get going, like Caleb Martin. Kelly Oubre's been really good for them too. You had a really good guy in Jerry McCain before he went down. That was unfortunate, but they'll eventually hopefully get him back. Guys like KJ Martin, I know he didn't play the other day. He's been really big for them. Yubasali, he's been another big part. I'll talk about him a little bit more about what he's going to look like the rest of this season. But a real big thing for them is now they go on the road because thanks Disney on Ice, we can never have good things at Christmas time. They go on the road
every year.
6 straight games on the road. Which
every
is so
year.
Annoying.
Both teams every year.
Yeah, it's so annoying. But anyway, they just started the road trip with Boston, and now they're going out west for 4 games. Utah, Portland, Sacramento, Golden State. Those 4 teams, the first 2, especially Utah and Portland, those are games you got to win. Those are teams that just are not as good as you. Especially, I don't think any of them are back-to-back. I'm going to double-check on that. Yeah, none of them are back-to-backs. The only back-to-back they have is San Francisco or Sacramento and Golden State. Those are games you got to win, and Embiid should be playing in most of these games. So I think games like that, you got to start getting rolling, start getting a winning streak going together, try to win 4 or 5 on the road moving forward, and try to start getting back to way things should be. The way that George and the way that the team was built out this season. Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid on the floor every other night, playing like they should be and getting to the playoffs like they should be.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge. And, it seems like things are starting to finally come back into peace how they should be. And everyone knows that Christmas Day is the unofficial start of the NBA season. So everything that happened in the past, forget about it, didn't happen. Season officially starts now. You mentioned Gershon Yabusele. He's been huge.
He has been. He is probably, I want to compare it like the Zach Bond of the Sixers this year. He has been a bang for the buck signing. He has been everything and more that you hoped that you would get out of him. Now, the unfortunate part, and we're going to talk about a trade guy in particular in a little bit, but he could get really interesting come February around the trade deadline because he is most likely going to get a role player type contract that the NBA teams give out, which is probably about $10 to $15 million, depending on how teams value him. I don't know how much he's going to get, but he's probably going to get a 3 to 4 year deal for somewhere in that range. And the Sixers just can't afford that contract. There's a reason they only signed him to a $2 million deal at the beginning of the season. So now when he becomes trade eligible, he becomes an interesting piece. Do you move off him and get as much value as you can? Or do you keep him around because you think you can win a championship? And you're kind of in the rough spot where you're 11-17 right now. You got to put things into high gear if you really want to see how this season fits out. Because if it gets to the point where we're 6 games out of 10th place, I don't think we're going to be able to make up the ground. You might have to start moving on guys like Yubasali, maybe a guy like Kelly Oubre. I don't know if they trade Oubre. They really like Kelly Oubre, and I think they shouldn't trade him. But expiring contracts are guys that can be dealt just like that. So maybe a guy like Drummond too. I don't think they should. I think they should keep Drummond around. It's a good backup center for Embiid. But Yubasali is the number one guy I'm really looking forward to moving forward around this trade deadline coming up because they could buy and they could bring in. We'll talk about some guys, and I'll talk about some other candidates I think they could do. but Yabusele could be the guy that becomes the expendable piece. Kind of like how when they traded Patrick Beverley I think was it last year or the year before, whenever it was. He was on the expiring deal, and everybody's like, why are we trading Pat Bev? Pat Bev was awesome on this team. You got whatever you got for him on an expiring contract, and you hope to gain asset because you're already in the hole for the trades that you have made in the past. So you're trying to make up ground and trying to build on the future, because eventually Joel Embiid's not going to be the MVP that everybody knows him as in a couple of years. And you got to either win the championship or go all in, or just try to make up for the future at the same time. It's a tough role to do. So I don't know. He could be a name that you could look for in a couple of months. Like, man, the Sixers are really trading him, but it's just the way things are in the NBA.
Yeah, a full NBA lookout now. Jimmy Butler was seemingly gone out of Miami, and then it came out the other day, their president, their owner, said, we're not trading Jimmy Butler. The Jimmy Butler situation is weird. Like, he's not playing, but Miami's not going to trade him. Should the Sixers maybe swoop in and be like, hey, bring Jimmy Butler back to Philadelphia, or is that a lost cause?
It's about 5-6 years too late in the first, however long it's been since we traded him to Miami. At this point, I think from what you hear is Miami doesn't want to trade him. So if they do end up trading him, I think it's going to be a haul and a half just to get him. And that's going to be guys like Yabusele. It's going to be probably almost every not every first round pick, but a ton of the first round picks they have available. Caleb Martin's probably going to have to be in that deal too to make the money work. I think a guy like Jared McCain, probably they would ask for him specifically for a guy that they would want for Butler. So could it happen? Yes, it could. Could they make it work? 100% they can make it work. They have the money that can make it work with Martin. They have some of the pieces like McCain and the first round picks they're trying to get back. But I just don't think adding Butler to a team of Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid really makes them that much better, because I think it cuts into their depth a little bit. It causes you to pretty much rely on those four. And could you rely on those four? 100%. I see Boston doing it right now with Porzingis and Brown and Tatum and Derek White, and they're relying on those four, and they have good role players too. But they've been able to find young guys that can really play well for them, like a Peyton Pritchard. And not that we don't have those guys, I just think that they work better as a core than what we have. And I just don't think adding Butler really helps their case in the long run. I could be wrong. They could trade for Butler, and they could turn into the best team in the league this season, a team you don't want to play in the playoffs, and they can go all the way and win the finals. And then if they win the finals, the trade is worth it because you win an NBA championship. But I just don't think – first off, don't think Miami's trading him overall. I don't think Pat Riley wants to get rid of him. I think this is all just smoke and mirrors with him, probably want another contract or whatever. Jimmy's a weird dude anyway. We know this about him already. So I don't know overall. I don't think it would work out, but it still could happen. But I think it's gonna cost a lot, because I don't think they want to trade him. I think they're gonna want to keep him around. So it's gonna cost a lot to trade him in the first place. And I think the main thing is Jared McCain. So if you really want to trade for Jimmy Butler, I think you got to give up Jared McCain. So if you really want to do that, go ahead. But I don't know. I personally wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not interested. No go. Now, if you fast forward to February, when the deadline is, who's some guys you could see the Sixers maybe looking at if they are buyers at the deadline, depending what happens in the next 2 months?
So I think that overall at forward, if they keep Yabusele, they're gonna not go trade for a forward. I think a guy that they could replace is Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon just has not been a good piece for them. You signed him as a veteran, hoping to get a really good underrated 3-point shooter from them, and he just has flat out not been good for you. I think he hasn't made more than 2 threes in a game this season. That's not what you want. If they really want to be buyers, I think looking for 3-point shooting is the way to go. The number one guy I think they could go for is Luke Kennard. I really like Luke Kennard. He's a fantastic 3-point shooter. I think he's like third this season. He's only played like 15 games, but he's third overall in shooting this season. He would be a really good piece. He's on an expiring contract. He's only about $9 million, so you can make the money work with some of the guys you have. It's not really any big thing you have to trade. I think you can make Kennard work. And we talk about it all the time and why the ratings are down so much with the NBA, and we'll talk about that more after this. But the 3-point shooting is just so big now in the NBA. Look at Boston the other night on Christmas. They shot 50-something threes, and the long runs where they couldn't make any threes is why the Sixers were able to take advantage with big buckets. So because of that, you need 3-point shooting, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. But if I think a guy like Luke Kennard could be someone that could really be good for you. I think another one is Malik Beasley out in Detroit. He's having a resurgence season. I believe he's 34, 35 years old, Malik Beasley. He's having a really good year. He's only 28. Wow, I thought he was older than that. But he's having a really good season shooting overall. He's up in the high 40s. He's averaging about 16, 17 a game. He could be a really good piece for your team this season. So I think shooting is a big one. I think you could maybe go for some other forwards if you want to, like a Jabari Smith from Houston, maybe a Tari Easton if Houston's selling a little bit, because I know they're trying to win too right now. They're second in the West. So you could try to find all those guys that are on expiring deals if you really want to go in and win. And honestly, it's the East versus the Celtics right now. I like the Knicks. I think they're doing what the Sixers could be doing and going all in. They went in and traded for Cat. That was them going all in. They got 2-3 years to win, and they got to beat the Celtics. The Cavs are having a really good season. So the East is a tough division. So if they really want to win, they need a little bit more shooting. And I really think their main thing is health. They just got to stay healthy. If they do stay healthy, I think they could end up being a team in the playoffs that nobody really wants to go against. I'll tell you what, if they end up as the 7 seed and the Cavs are the 2 seed and Celtics get the 1, the Cavs are the 2, I'll sign up for a 7-game series against the Cavs in the first round. I think we can 100% handle the Cavs. I know they're good. Donovan Mitchell's having a great season. Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, they're a good group. But I think the Sixers can handle them if we all stay healthy and we get to the postseason without any major Embiid concerns.
All right, let's look at the ratings on Christmas for the NBA. We spoke about the ratings, how horrible they were a few weeks ago. Well, the NBA delivered its most watched Christmas Day in 5 years. Viewership was up 84% from last year across all of the ABC and ESPN networks. The NBA on Christmas Day averaged 5.25 million viewers per game in the U.S. Pretty good for the NBA and how they've been recently. The matchup between the Lakers and Warriors was the most watched NBA regular season and Christmas Day game in 5 years. Most regular season game in 5 years, period. Averaged 7.76 million viewers. Peaked at 8.32 million. That was a great game. Steph and LeBron, of course. He had a double bang from Steph. LeBron with the rejection. They had it all in that game. Mm-hmm. So that was a great game. Austin Reeves with the game winner. Good for the NBA to get their ratings back up, but now they just need to sustain these type of ratings.
Mm. It's funny. Whenever I talk about basketball and how down they are, people are like, oh, you don't even like the NBA. And while I will say I like college basketball more than NBA, at least recently, I still like watching NBA basketball. I used to love watching the Sixers every night whenever they were on. I would love watching LeBron when he was on the early days of the Cavs and the Warriors. I love watching basketball like that. I mentioned this earlier. It's gotten to the point where 3-point shooting just has killed, I think, the NBA right now. And it's becoming a point where the sequence I want to refer to is on Christmas Day, I'm watching the Spurs and the Knicks game. And Wembanyama, I love Victor Wembanyama. I think he's top 5 player in the world right now. He is so good. I wish he was a Sixer. I would have loved to have him on the Sixers team. But he is pulling up for a 3 in the late third quarter when they're up by like 12. Absolutely clanks it off the backboard. And then the Knicks get the rebound, throw it down to Cat, and he chucks up a 3. And he drills it. But I'm just thinking to myself, 2-7 whatever guys are shooting long, deep 3-pointers in like a tight-knit game in the third quarter. I'm like, what are we doing right now? This is not how the NBA used to be. And like, I know everybody's a shooter now, so everybody's going to keep shooting. And that's not the direct reason why ratings are down. I know that, but just simple stuff like that. People are taking so many threes. The Celtics, for example, look at the difference between last night and last night's Celtics and the Celtics on Christmas. The Celtics on Christmas really couldn't hit a lot of 3-pointers early on. It got them in holes, and they went on scoreless runs because they couldn't hit any threes. And then last night they put up 145 points against the Pacers because they shoot almost 50% from 3. So I guess you live and die by it. I just don't think it's a sustainable thing going on in the NBA. They pretty much, with the NBA game, you got a really good game out of LeBron and Steph. You don't know how many more you're really going to get out of that, which is, I'm glad for them. They had a good game. It was a really good game overall, like you said. That double bang by Steph, the block by Jane from Mike, it's just brought back old NBA memories, and you love that.
Yeah.
It's just so overall good. But they just won the battle on Christmas. The war is still going on. They got to climb off this. And I really think the front point is finding someone to advertise for. Because like I mentioned, how many more LeBron and Steph games are you really going to, classic battles are you going to get? It's coming to the point where, and like another guy's Kevin Durant, they had that, I don't know if you're watching at the time, but they had the whole segment in the middle of the day where it was LeBron, Steph, and Durant talking about the old teams and the old matchups in the finals. And wow, that's great. And I love that. And everybody love it's LeBron and KD and Steph. They're going to draw ratings. Eventually, one of these days, all three of them are going to be out of this league. And it's going to come to a point where someone's got to take up that mantle as the next best player. And I really don't know who that's going to be. I think they should heavily lean in trying to advertise one of them. They've been trying it with Anthony Edwards. I think a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the Thunder is a really good guy to go towards. But then you don't put him on Christmas Day, and then you got kind of a team like the Bucks. I know Giannis was chirping. I don't know how we're not playing on Christmas. I think it worked out in the end with everybody. The Sixers brought on a great game, and that's good for them. The Spurs, you saw how great Wemby is. I actually love Victor Wembanyama. Have a great game with the Knicks at noon. The Timberwolves and the Mavericks, that was a great game. Even though when Luka went down, they kept that competitive. We got the Classic at night, and then the Suns-Nuggets game was good too. So like I said, they won the battle on Christmas, but the war is still going on. The NFL will continue to shell them in viewership, even though the NFL did better. But it's Netflix and those numbers or whatever. But they had a great day. But they need to build on it. They need to start. They need to find a way. I don't know what Adam Silver has to do to bring the fans back, but he's got to do something quick because it's getting to the point where you're not going to be able to ride the success anymore of your aging superstars. You got to either find new ones or you got to be able to change an aspect of this game to get people back in. And it's not changing the All-Star game to have the rising stars in and the target scores and all and like the tournament and stuff like that. I just don't think those things are working because fans don't care. Even like the in-season tournament, I don't think fans really care that much. It's a cool thing, but you got to find a way to pull these fans back in. I really think that starts with advertising and making people be able to watch all these games in the first place. So, like I said, they won the war, they won the battle. The war is still going on, so they got a tough road ahead of them. Still, even though after
he can talk to his buddy Rob Manfred because Robbie's been coming up with some crazy ideas recently, so maybe they can have a little chat. Maybe they can come up with some silly ideas together. All right, Matt, I appreciate you coming on. Have a great New Year. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Of course. Appreciate it.
All right. That's going to do it for us today on the what is this called? The Philly Sports Hour. What do we got coming up today? We got Flyers and Ducks at 4 o'clock. Cutter Gauthier, first matchup against the Flyers. He said he's had this day circled on his calendar. John Tortorella said, I don't care what he says. So that'll be fun. Sixers Jazz, they start their West Coast trip tonight, 9:30. And then Eagles Cowboys tomorrow at 1 o'clock. All those college football games coming up next week for the college football playoffs. We'll talk to you next Saturday. Appreciate all of you for coming. If you ever miss a live Philly Sports Hour, you can listen to them wherever you find your podcasts and watch it on YouTube. Follow us on social medias. We're everywhere. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you next week.
Swing and a drive, left field. It's deep. It's gone. Yes! And it is gone. Yes! It is bedlam at the bank.
Look at the doctor. Yes, he's got it. Here he comes. Way rocks the baby to Cleveland. Slam dunk. And the doctor made a sensational play. Hunter in front. The bucket. They score! And Giroux got it. Left